George, welcome to the show.
I am stoked to be here, man. Round two.
Round two. I was on George's show. It was a fantastic conversation. He really asked me a ton of questions about marketing, and I really enjoyed it, and I couldn't wait to get him on the show. Strap in. We're ready for a marketing boot camp. Here we go. So, George, give us the roundabout of who you are, where you came from, and your just the whole story. Just lay it on us.
Yeah, I'll give you guys the short version. And to answer who I am, I'm still trying to figure that out every day, right? So I'll be really transparent about that. Yeah, I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, came from a pretty broken childhood, sexual abuse, drug abuse, physical abuse, not really the greatest of all things. And so I did what any kid would do is I kind of ran away, was homeless, supported myself, and then joined the Marine Corps because that was a smart thing to do. Let's go from one broken home to another one where they reward you for being broken. But it was good. I ended up going to boot camp, spent 12 years of my life on active duty in the United States Marine Corps, 3 combat deployments. 2004, I almost lost my legs, spent a year in a wheelchair, gained 100 pounds. They wanted to amputate him, got addicted to narcotics, beat that, got married, divorced, then lost my dad to metastatic brain and lung cancer, then went to Afghanistan, had 7 concussions in 3 years, came back, and they're like, hey, you're pretty broken. I know it's been fun, but we can't use you anymore. And so we're going to send you home, no benefits, no nothing. And the Afghanistan trip was enough that I realized I needed to change my life. I wasn't an addict. I didn't want to live like that. I didn't want to end up like my parents. And so I replaced one addiction with working out, and I went that way and started eating clean, got into paleo, and taught myself how to cook. So I started documenting the whole process on the internet. I made a fake Facebook account, right? Because I didn't go to college, so I couldn't have Facebook back in 2009. So I had to go make a fake college account, create a Facebook account, and then I just started posting the food I was cooking every day when I came home from Afghanistan. I made a rule that when I got home, I was going to cook 1 recipe a day until I had it memorized. And then once I had 5 memorized, I knew how to cook. Because then I could like swap out an onion for a pepper or change garlic for onion salt and something like that. And so I just documented this process while they were doing my medical separation. And after a couple of months, people started to notice, and they were like, God, I love that you post this. Why are you doing this? I'm like, oh, I'm just teaching myself how to cook. And secretly, I was documenting my journey to beating bulimia and having accountability without anybody knowing. And so then when the Marine Corps was like, hey, you have 30 days left and you're out, I had been already posting online for maybe 9 months, didn't really know what I was doing, just posting on Facebook. And someone's like, you should launch a blog. Like, what's a blog? And they're like, oh, you go to this website, blogger.com, 2010, you just sign up and you put all your content there. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I started that, and that's where my first business as an entrepreneur was born. It was called Civilized Caveman Cooking Creations.com, the stupidest business name you could ever have. But somehow people remembered how to spell it, even though I couldn't. And so I became a food blogger. I became a paleo food blogger. And right around when I was getting out, I'd posted maybe 100 recipes in about a year. And everyone's like, God, you really should have like an ebook. And I'm like, what's an ebook? And they're like, well, you take all your content and you save it and then you give it to us. And so I spent a week downloading all my own recipes, putting them in a Word document, and I emailed it to them. And they're like, no, we wanted to pay you. I'm like, why would you pay me? And they're like, because it's convenient. I'm like, yeah, but they're all free on my website. They're like, yeah, but you make it easy. Upload it to this website called ClickBank and then sell it. I'm like, how much do I sell it for? And they're like, I'd pay $27 for it. And my first digital product was born in 2010. And at this point, I had no email list. I had a blog on blogger.com. So it was actually Civilized Caveman Cooking Creations.blogspot.com, just for the full record for everybody. I'm like, how dumb I was. And I launched it, and I remember the first day I just did a blog post, and I was like, hey guys, everybody asked, I put together this cookbook. Here you go. It's $27. And I made $6,000. Like, I made my monthly, like 2 months of my salary after 12 years on active duty in one day. And I was like, well, this is a fluke. Something's broken, right? Then the next day I made like 12 grand. And then the third day I made 30 grand. And the volume from the first 2 days moved it up in ClickBank. So other people started seeing it. And I guess I was one of the first paleo ebooks back then, like 2010, 2011. And so it was kind of nuts. And I became born as an entrepreneur that day. And so the military got me out, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to figure this out. And so I just kept going, and I self-taught digital marketing, affiliate marketing, email marketing, social media marketing. And fast forward 2014, someone's like, you should write a real book. And I was like, how do I do that? I'm like, well, you need a publisher. I'm like, where do I find one of those? And I went to a conference, and there was a book publisher there. And I walked up and I said, hey, nice to meet you. Like, do I know you? I said, you should. I'm your next published author. And the guy's like, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm just this blogger, boom. And he gave me a book deal, did the book, launched it, became a 22-week New York Times bestseller, hit number 4 in the world. Organically, by the way, never spent a dollar on marketing. It was all organic. And then someone's like, you should launch an app. I'm like, oh, like on your iPhone? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I went straight to Google, figured it out, found an app developer, and said, I want to take this ebook and turn it into an app. Launched the app and hit number 1 in the world and got featured by Apple as the top health app of 2015. And so at this point, I had about 4 million people a month coming to my website. I had about 750,000 social media fans. I was one of the top 10 pinners on Pinterest for pins originating to my site. And everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. That's why it works. And I became a marketing guy. And so I did that career, and it was great. And then I got married, and my wife was pregnant with my son. And I realized I really hate cooking. I would rather pay amazing people like you to make me delicious food and eat it. And once I basically beat my demons, I overcame bulimia. I started openly talking about it on my blog, like how I struggled for 15 years. There was no reason for me to continue being a food blogger. I needed to write the conclusion to that book to put it into a metaphor, and I had to walk away. And so I gave the company away as a Christmas present to one of my mastermind students. I was like, here's a 7-figure Christmas present. And I literally walked away. I deleted social media, deleted my email, changed my phone number, and I went offline for 2 years to raise my son and get connected to my wife. And in that time, people had heard what I'd done, and they're like, can you teach us what you did? I'm like, sure. And so one of my friends asked me to keynote an event. I'd never keynoted before. I wung this whole thing, and I taught them the 3 steps to loving your customers that'll double your business. I remember it like it was yesterday. And that was my first ever keynote, and I got my first ever consulting deal out of the back of it, which was men's health and women's health. And then snowball started, and then companies started calling left and right. Hey, will you help with this? Will you help with this? Will you help with this? And then I basically became a digital marketing consultant, and I've worked with all the amazing companies. I've built some really big ones, taken two of them to unicorn status. And so On It, Vital Proteins, Men's Health, Titleist, TaylorMade, personalities, all you know and love, all out there. I've been the Oz behind the curtain, as Ryan Moran called me. And I did that for a couple of years, run a high-end mastermind, do consulting. And then my wife was like, hey, babe, we're good, but you talk a lot, and I think it's time for you to go back on the internet. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I just need you to get your voice out somewhere else because it's getting a little exhausting hearing this all day. And I was like, okay. And so I launched a Facebook group and came back online about a year ago, launched the podcast, and now I help entrepreneurs build and ethically scale their business. And that is the shortest version I could give you of my story.
That's a fantastic story. Yeah, I think I was right when I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I honestly didn't realize so much of it, but man, I don't even know where to start. I guess where to start is, everything that you learned to this point now, what do you see that is relevant back in 2010 that's relevant now? Is there anything was it all learning on the job, or is there things that, are tried and true in digital marketing that always work?
Always. You know what? One of the things, Nick, that was really powerful for me is I tell everybody, I gave this keynote and I said, I'm only successful because I'm stupid. And everybody laughed. And I was like, I'm not talking about IQ. I have no idea what my IQ is. I said, but most people come into business and entrepreneurship and marketing with somebody else's container on what it should look like. And so they have a preconceived notion or a lens or a paradigm of how it should be done. I came in not even knowing a world existed. And I was like, okay, this is really simple. I want to help people. I need to ask people how I can help them. And then I need to give them exactly what they want consistently and respond to every comment no matter what. And literally that was my rule. When I started my business, that was my rule. It's like, what recipes would you like? I would learn how to cook it. I would cook it. And then I would DM every one of those people that the recipe was live and asked them what they needed. And they're like, I would love it if you made a video teaching us how to make this too. And that was the rule from day one. And so what I was lucky enough, Nick, was that I came in with an openness to what it would look like. And I didn't get brought into strategies and tactics. I got brought into principles. And so when I look at marketing, I study the history of marketing. I don't study marketing from 20 years ago. I study marketing from 100 years ago. I go back and I look at the 1700s, the 1800s, the direct response copywriters, the newspaper articles, the headlines, and I think about it. And marketing for me, now that I'm 10 years ahead and I teach this every day, marketing is nothing more than a two-way value-based relationship. And I would prefer them to be long-term. Like you can go get coffee, like perfect example with you and your restaurants with Caliente, right? I can come in and get a pizza once a week, right? But I guarantee you that if you and I see each other at a baseball park or a coffee shop, I'm going to come have a conversation with you and not buy a pizza from you in that moment. But that conversation is going to tilt me into deeper endowment with your brand or remind me that I want to eat pizza that night and I can only get it from Nick. And so I think at the core of it for me, the one way to guarantee that your business always succeeds when it comes to marketing is always make your customer the hero. And I have a marketing law. I have 7 of them that I teach. But number 1 is everyone feels valuable whether they give you your credit card or not. And that is probably the most long-lasting principle that you can apply in marketing that always will ring true and you can't lose. And so the way that I think about it now is back in 2010, the internet wasn't here. We were already on social. We were already doing it, but the consumption was like 60% less than it is now, right? Like the amount of consumption spent on the phone and internet now is insane. But when you go back from 2010, you go back to 2000, nobody had iPhones. We were still playing Snake on our Nokias, right? We had our StarTAC flip phones. We were doing that. But yet somehow we were all still talking about products. We were all still marketing products. We were all still buying and consuming products. We were telling our friends about it. And what happened, in my opinion, is everybody thought that when the internet came, that marketing changed. It didn't. It just sped up. But at the core of marketing is the 92% of marketing that is done via word of mouth. 92% to this day. That is a 2019 study. 92% of purchasing and buying decisions come directly from word of mouth marketing. And then everybody stopped focusing on that relationship and helping people do that for them and focusing on the attention and the transaction and wondering why they lose. And so one little caveat for people here is you have to remember that there's only one of 5 things that somebody will ever say about you. And I challenge you right now, when this podcast is over, to go to your Facebook feed. And I'm going to guarantee you that every post you see goes into one of these 5 buckets: humor, credibility, controversy, social status, or education. Every single one of them. And there's a human posting every single one of them. And so the core principle of marketing is that if you meet people where they are, you build a relationship that's two-way with them, and you give them one thing that fits into one of those buckets, you capitalize on 92% of word-of-mouth marketing. Versus somebody leaves a comment on your Instagram and you never respond. Somebody sends you a DM and you never respond. You only talk to customers who buy, and once they buy, you don't fulfill on your product and never respond. You end up creating an anti-marketing machine. And so when I look at 2000, 2010, 2020, and companies that I've studied all the way back into the late 1800s, they all have one common thread in mind, and it's that every single customer who came in accomplished the goal that they paid to accomplish, used the product that they paid to use, and had support in doing it. And so I think no matter what, when it comes to marketing, the only thought process should be, how do I always make this about the relationship with the customer and not about the transaction? And a byproduct of this, and I know you see this in your store, is you have these people where you look up their history and you're like, this person has spent 10 grand on pizza in 12 months. Like, where did that even come from, right? Because you start to tilt in that endowment in that relationship. But that also means that every time they come in, and you nailed this on our podcast, it's about the person, not about the pizza. It's about their experience, the smile, greeting them, asking them about their day, remembering a detail about them, sending dog treats at the door, bringing in their barrels when you get to their house. you're actually ethically hijacking other modalities in their life. So all they can do is think about you across the board. And so that's a long-winded answer to a very short question.
Well, so also on social media, you're saying how important it is to be responding to everything. Like people that, like you're saying, if somebody comments and they're like, well, that comment really doesn't mean anything, and they don't just say like, thanks for the comment or anything back, like they're really doing themselves a disservice. And
And
if they're getting, right?
I laugh. Like, think about your pizza shop. Think about Apple, right? I was like, can you imagine if somebody walked into an Apple store and walked up to 4 employees and asked a question and the employees just stared them dead in the eye and didn't respond? Right?
Yeah,
Like, can you imagine if somebody walked into your restaurant, stood at your counter, and was maybe 5 minutes from ordering? They're like, hey, so what pizza would you recommend? Or like, do you think I should have this beer or this? And you just literally stare them dead in the eye and don't ever respond. They would never stay. But yet we expect human beings to do something differently on the platforms where we tell them we're going to support them. And so, Nick, and everyone's like, how do I respond to every comment? How do I hear it all the time, right?
sure.
I was like, the problem is that you're trying to be everywhere at once instead of being one place all the time. And your customers primarily spend most of their time in one place. I would vet that 90% of most people's customers have a platform preference. It's either Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And your job isn't to bring your customers where you want them to go. Your job is to go meet them where they are so they can choose to come in. And so human beings only need 3 things psychologically, right? In the world of digital marketing, marketing online, and it's to feel seen, heard, and respected. That's it. And the truth is that you're not the only page that they're commenting on. You're not the only Facebook page that they're engaging with. You're not the only Instagram page, and you're not the only restaurant in town. But if I live where you are, and I love social media, and I follow you on Instagram and 2 other pizza places, I guarantee you that if you're the one that responds to every comment, that there's only one place I can buy pizza.
I think another part when you're talking about the seen, heard, and respected,
Yep.
how important is that when a complaint comes back? I think that's all of it right there. That's how you deal with a complaint. You make sure they're seen, heard, and respected. But
Totally. And you know what? This is a good one, Nick. This is a good one. And I'm already fired up. This is my first interview of the day. I'm like loaded. I haven't had caffeine yet. I get like antsy about this stuff, but I know because I consumed a lot of your stuff and I watch what you do. What people forget is that if somebody complains, it's a gift.
Yes.
It's a gift. Because if somebody really hated you, they wouldn't be complaining. They would be silently destroying you. And when you really, really think about it, if somebody is upset and they take the time to call, they take the time to email, they take the time to complain, what they're really saying is, I'm angry, but really I want this fixed. I want something different. I want to remain loyal to you. But then there's experiences that we've all had with restaurants, and think about it, right? Not yours, but there's been plenty of times we've gone to a 5-star restaurant, a Michelin star restaurant, and we expected something and we got something completely different. We didn't say anything to the waiter, nothing to the chef. We left. We all talked about it in the car. And every single time somebody asked that about the restaurant, like, oh, don't go. No, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't good. Because we actually weren't even interested in going back because the experience was that bad. And then there's other times where like, God, we really love this place. Like, we want to come back. And I had this experience. I need to share this and I need to talk about this so that they can rectify it, but also that I feel safe enough to come back or heard enough to come back. And the mistake that people make is when you get complaints and compliments, they look at them like they're like a weapon instead of a gift.
Yeah.
And trust me, customer complaints, customer feedback, they are a gift. And like for years, it was like the customer's always right. They are, because that was an experience they had on the other side of it. And it's not about like you win, they win. It's about diffusing it by hearing them and then you taking a look at it and being like, wow, could that have happened? Yeah. What if I didn't make her wrong and I didn't make my driver wrong? What if we all just looked at it and said, wow, are there ways that we can improve? Right? You got to remove the ego from it. But yeah, customer complaints, customer feedback. I've turned more haters into customers than anything you could ever imagine. Like I'm a digital marketing consultant, right? So I do 1-days, I have masterminds. I've had people flagrantly do podcasts about me. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a scam artist and a marketer. And so I get their number from a friend and I call him. I'm like, hey man, like, you good? I was like, I listen to your podcast. Like, I just want to talk about it. Literally 2 weeks later, they pay me $25,000. And then
Wow.
we're friends forever. Right. And I'm like, it's just about understanding the human nature. And I think, Nick, it's so easy because of social and digital and like this fast track button to touch points to forget that it's our moms, our dads, our brothers, and our sisters on the other side of these interactions, or somebody else's moms, dads, brothers, and sisters. And so I like to challenge everybody to go into it with openness and like put the lens on of like, if I didn't think I was the best, if I didn't think my crap didn't stink, would there be any validity or truth to this complaint? And if the answer is yes, take a look at it. And if the answer is no, be like, great. Do I want to get into a pissing match, or would I rather fill this person's tank?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I said, yeah, go ahead.
no, you're perfect, because you're right on exactly what I try to teach my guys is don't take it personal, because that's
Not
exactly,
personal.
they may have been the one that made the pizza. They may have been the one that cut it. And, someone's calling and said they didn't like the cut or something. And they take it well, I cut that pizza. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. Can we just fix it? I guess that's what you're saying is, I think what's interesting too, is you're talking about, I think almost when you have someone do a podcast about yourself, it's almost like the haters, that are out there. It's not so much customer complaints, but the haters. So I think you got a pretty interesting way to deal with the haters too. Like you're saying, just befriend them, basically. Like, hey,
I mean, like,
right?
like I sit here, right, and we talk about people that have changed this world, right? And every one of us, we do what we do because we want to have an impact, right? We want to create an experience with food. We want to create a memory. We want to break bread. Like somebody trusting you to buy your food is the biggest gift and surrender moment in the world. Like they have no idea what's happening in the kitchen. You could be poisoning the crap out of them and they could die on the table, but they trust you. And a lot of people forget that. Like food is one of those sacred experiences, right? And so when I think about why we build business and why we do what we do, we want to make money. It's okay to say, I want to make money. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a billionaire. But you don't start wanting to make money. You start by having an idea or something you're going to shift and then realize you can make money doing it. And you do both of them to fund it. And so when we think about that, I look at that opportunity and I'm like, look at the greats in the world. Like, can anybody tell me that Martin Luther King didn't change the world? And then do you think he had 100 people out of 100 being like, I love you so much. I love you so much. Right? When you make a stance or you take a stand, the reason I use a lighthouse analogy in business and in my life is I wrote a mission statement for my own life, Nick. Like I was depressed, I was suicidal. Even with a child, I was like, I don't want to live anymore. And I needed something bigger than myself. And so I wrote a mission statement and I read this thing every morning and it said, my job on this planet is to stand with structure in the face of resistance to create possibility. To stand with structure in the face of resistance to create possibility. And you can steal it, but it's tattooed on my body and getting there now. So it's George. Mine. I made it. That's fine. Put a little TM next to it because it's already on a t-shirt and trademarked. Okay.
Love it.
And so when we think about that, and the reason I love lighthouses when we think about business is lighthouses are beautiful. We go look at them. We go see them. They become historic landmarks, right? We can't go out and see them in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane, but they still have to stand there with their light on. And it's their commitment and resolve to continue to stand there when they're getting battered and broken that makes them a lighthouse. Not, I'm going to shutter my doors, disappear, and run away so all the boats in the water die. And so when we think about this, and this is what I tell people when we think about this, haters, comments, complaints, you have to realize that if you have any emotional response, there's truth to it. Because if I call you a purple dinosaur, you're not going to be like, no, I'm not Barney. You'd be like, no, I'm not a purple dinosaur. I'm like, right. Notice how you're calm. And I was like, you suck at showing up to meetings on time. You're like, no, I don't. I'm there all the time. And I'm like, okay, why did you get reactive? There's a part of you that recognizes the truth in it. And it's our job as leaders, as people, as humans to look in and do that and to grow that. And so I look at this, like I had a guy tag me the other day. I have no idea what happened. One of my buddies owns a podcast placement agency and was pitching a guy with a podcast for one of his clients. And the guy responded, said, I'm going to fly out and punch your boss, Jeremy, in his clown face. And George Bryant can't even build $100 business, never mind a 7, 8, or 9 figure business. And I wasn't even in this conversation. I was on a podcast like 6 months ago, and I was like, oh man, this one's good. This one's like really good. I didn't know who he was. I'd never heard his name before. I never heard any of it. And everyone's like, are you upset? I'm like, not at all. Not at all. Like, it doesn't land. It doesn't bother me. I was like, I can't build $100 business. I was like, I made 5 figures when I was sleeping this morning, right? And I'm not going to go publicly say that or post that, but I realize that there's plenty of people that will hear my message or hear my podcast or even hear my teachings and be challenged by it. And it's my commitment to consistency and that lighthouse that's going to stand there that actually breaks the belief down, not my reactance to it. Right? Because when you start throwing back and you're like, no, I did it, or I cut that pizza, you're wrong, or I made those triangles perfect, and that's what you said you wanted, right? Like, I have a 3-year-old, I know how to cut pizza, right? Because every day it has to be a different shape. And this kid can tell that they're a millimeter off. And he's like, sorry, daddy, let me get a ruler. You missed one, right? Or that doesn't look like Mickey to me. And when we think about that, the only thing that we can do in those moments is to absorb it and look at it and be like, okay, is this something that I need to catch and hold on to, right? Like, do I need to learn from this? Do I need to be here? Or do I just let it go? And Jonah Berger talks about this a lot in his book, The Catalyst, which is basically how to change anybody's mind. And when you meet resistance with resistance, you create reactance. And reactance digs people in deeper, digs their heels in, gets into endowment, and actually makes the shift impossible. But when you meet resistance with love and acceptance and openness, it automatically diffuses the problem. And so the way that I look at it is you have 2 choices. You can either drink poison and accept everybody else to die, or you can realize it was never your poison to drink in the first place. And you can help them and support them. And then if it lands, take a look at yourself and figure out where you can support yourself more. Where are you lacking in confidence? And so, like, I do get some of these, Nick, where someone's like, oh, well, if you're so good, well, why don't you do it every day? And it didn't bother me for a couple of years. And I was like, I didn't want to. And then like 6 months ago, somebody said that. And I was like, you know what? Fine. I'm launching my podcast. Done. Right? Like it got to me enough. I was like, you know what? I do have something to say now. I'm going to say it now. And when it landed, I did something about it. And so it's kind of just how I carry my day now.
Yeah, I like that with how when you talk about how it landed, because there are times like I think maybe I didn't realize that someone will say something and it does hit, and it's kind of like, wait a second, but that's a good time for reflection and try to figure out, okay, can I do something about it? And you said, yeah, I did. I'm going to go ahead and start my podcast. So there, and
Yeah,
yeah, and great things come from that too. That's how you grow, right? Like that's
totally.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's really, really important. I wrote a post the other day. I don't remember what it was. It was a really like short one-liner, but it had something to do with basically, oh, words are only bullets if you identify as the target,
Mm.
is what I wrote. I said, words are only bullets if you identify as the target. And it was something that I was like really thinking about. And I was like, and it's that whole conversation of like, and listen, we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners, right? It doesn't matter what we do. You could do it, quote unquote, perfectly. And there'll be somebody, something always to improve and iterate, except we get upset when the people poke out holes. And it's like, no, this is the game. We iterate daily. And that means we have to iterate ourselves, how we take feedback, how we relate to customers. And by the way, I am not saying that everybody's like above brow. There are a few people that like cut them out, right? Like if
Yeah.
you have some like narcissistic sociopath coming after you, like you have to understand the difference. But if you can respond to somebody or hear that feedback and have a conversation about it and take it on, then it's worth, it's worth exploring. But you do have to protect yourself, right? And you got to take a look at these things and go. And we're met with ambiguity daily, like entrepreneurship, business, marketing. It changes every day. The only certainty we have is it's going to be uncertain. What worked today isn't going to work tomorrow. What worked tomorrow might work yesterday, but not tomorrow. And that's the world that we live in. Like, we don't know how many customers are going to come in the door, how many pizzas they're going to buy. Are they going to come back or are they never going to come back? Is that Facebook ad going to work? Is that message going to work? And so what I've found is that loving that ambiguity and loving the uncertainty of it and loving that process is the secret to success. And it's like, I want to go to the gym and deadlift 600 pounds again tomorrow, but I'm not there yet. I'm almost back there, but I have to go love the fact that I can't pick up 450 right now. And then I have to keep going till I pick up 450. And then I eventually get right back to where I want to go. And then I'm like, look, I've made it. What's my next goal? And I think that's kind of like the best way for me to keep my keel in the water as an entrepreneur And it's been the easiest way for me to stay focused, because the other side of that, and since we're in this vein, the reason that reacting to comments, feedback, and even marketing things that you launch and initiatives that you launch and products that you launch, reacting to the temporary result creates a permanent change. Because if we're focused on a target and we shoot once and we miss, we don't unload the gun and go home for the day, right? We're like, no, we make an adjustment and then we shoot again, and we make an adjustment and we shoot again, and we make an adjustment and we shoot again. And so we all have to be really protective of our energy and our containers. And so, yeah, if you launch a product and not as many people bought it as you wanted, take care of the ones that bought it, and then start exploring the possibility of what was missing, what could have been done differently. Was it the hook? Was it the headline? Was it the delivery? Was it the audience, right? I tell everybody, it's not that your product's ever bad. It's always either the wrong offer or the wrong audience, or a combination of the two, right? It's just changing wrapping paper. And so I think it's just, there's this tone that, like, underneath everything, like at the beginning, to close this loop, you talked about like in 2010 versus 2020. And this is that same vein, that where entrepreneurship isn't compartmentalized, business isn't compartmentalized. Like, the work we do on ourselves comes out in our business. The work we do in our business comes out in ourselves. And so if we can constantly look at things neutrally, unreactive, explore the possibilities, we're guaranteed to have massive shifts and lifts across the business, like rising tides. But it does require intentionality and mindset, right? Because it's easy to get wrapped up into that whole world and become a keyboard warrior. And I was like, well, now you're fighting the people that you were talking crap about yesterday, and you're one of them, right? Like, there's always a better one. And one of my students called me yesterday in the same vein, like literally I'm gonna have to send him this podcast. Like, it was exactly what we talked about yesterday. And he said, but blah, blah, blah. And I said, leadership is having something to say and knowing when not to say it.
Yeah,
and that was the one that kind of like hit him. And I think about that all the time, right? And so, I don't know. I actually love this topic. So, but I'll shut up now.
No, that's great. There's so many good points in there, and I think you nailed it. When you're talking about the products, and I think talking about the affiliate marketing and the digital marketing that you've done, is there products that you've come out with yourself, and then that you're also working on and developing and marketing and bringing to market?
Yeah. So we have a lot. So when I went offline, I was really just in love with being the guy behind the curtain for all these big companies, right? And like, it was a really good place for me healthily, right? Because it was actually about everybody else and nobody knew it was me. And like, I needed that healing and I needed that space without the pressure of the world. And so then the only thing I was doing then was my mastermind, right? And that's like my absolute favorite thing in the world, where I find entrepreneurs and I help them ethically scale their business through basically changing mindset and marketing, right? And that was it. But then I also realized that most of my industry is so broken when it comes to like the internet and online. And it's like, I'll give you the secrets. I'm like, there are no secrets. You can't copy and paste a business, right? Like, the secrets are free on YouTube, right? Let's stop making this difficult. And so I made a commitment to my team that I was going to break the industry and make everything out there better and give people the tools they need to succeed, and most of them for free. And so I did for 6 months. I basically took every course I found online and I was like, I'm going to do this better and give it away for free. And so I did. And then in that, people were like, okay, I got it. But I really just want you to bundle this together and pay for it, so I have the accountability. And so then we created a couple courses. So I basically have two models that I use. I have a 9-step model I call the Lighthouse Blueprint, right? Nautical themes all day at this point, right? I'm like a walking, cheesy, tweetable. And the Lighthouse Blueprint is my 9-step model to basically take any company from 0 to 2 to 3 million. And then I have my Lighthouse model, which is my big model, which I take like a company like yours, and we can go from like 5 million to 100 million. And so I have this big gap because I spent most of my career in the 5 million a year and up range, all the way up to 37 billion a year. But I really love spending my time in the beginning, right? Like, I think entrepreneurs should have access to clean water and food like humans, right? I don't think you should have to pay for secrets or pay for a chance. I think you should be able to figure out if it's a viable idea, get the support, and then put it into practice, and then pay to take it to the next level. And so, yeah, so everything we do is at mindofgeorge.com. But yeah, my favorite thing right now is my daily newsletter. I had somebody like 2 months ago, they're like, oh, you're so good at email. Why aren't you emailing every day? I'm like, because I've been lazy, but I'm ready to write emails every day. And so I've been writing an email every day now. It's been 36 days. And just so everybody understands like how obsessive I am about email marketing, we've only, because I didn't open it up until like yesterday, we've only had 250 people come through it. Of those 250 people, 238 have gotten all 30 emails. I have an average open rate of 91%.
Wow.
Over 31 emails.
Wow.
And the reason I waited is because I obsess. I obsess about customer journeys. I obsess about psychology. I obsess about value. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. And so I was like, I'm going to teach you every day the tools that you need to have the right mindset in marketing in your life and in your business. And so I make them commit to go through it, and they're all free. And I tell them, I'm like, if you quit, the only way back on is to pay $397 a month. Other than that, it's free. But yeah, and it's absolutely amazing. Like in 30 days, we've had people literally just read my emails for 30 seconds a day and double their company, hire an employee, launch a product, change their mindset. Like, and it's really, really powerful stuff. But I think the most important part for entrepreneurs is to understand that entrepreneurship can be a lonely game if you choose for it to be, or you can come have like a team in your corner. But at the end of the day, we're the Olympic athletes, right? Nobody can run your race for you. Nobody can compete in the game for you. But with the right people around you and kind of the right mindset, you're almost guaranteed to succeed.
I think that hits true on a lot of different notes there, you know, and I'm going to go out on a limb here because, you know, you're on the business equation. So is there a business equation that I can help you solve, George? Is there something out there that, you know, you wanted to bounce off of somebody that you've got stuck in your business to something maybe you could use an outside voice?
You know, yeah, actually, I'll throw this one out there. You know, my favorite thing is my podcast, right? And so I'm the king of organic, and I don't like using paid media till I have to, but I would love, because I have a ton of creative ideas, I would love to know how you would increase visibility of my podcast, which drops 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And what you would do to take the mind of George, which is one that only a few people should be plugged into, and go find new people to listen to it and help spread that message.
I think you know, honestly, a great question. I think we're trying to do the same thing with the Business Equation podcast. And you know, my take on it over the last month has been, you know, just going back to how would you market anything else? Consistency. That's number one, right? Like you have to be consistent in anything you do. So we have looked at ourselves real close and said, how can we be consistent with being out there? And then the next part would be the networking. I think is so important, you know, being on like your show and then on my show. And then if somebody hears you here and they're like, hey, who is this George guy? Like, man, this sounds like, I love his take on marketing and his customer complaints. And boy, that he just seems real. Like I want to get more of them. So I think, you know, you mentioned earlier, you're going to be on 7 podcasts today. Like, I think that's the way you do it is, you know, you're out there and you're putting yourself in front of everybody. And it's, you know, whether the product is a podcast or the product is a pizza or it's, you know, some kind of digital product, it's all the same. That's the whole thing. Like it's, you know, if you could take a pizza place and blow it up, or you could take, you know, I think your story is great because you're saying like, look, I was in the Marines, you know, 2 broken families, and then you were able to build, you know, multi-million-dollar businesses. It's like, you know, you can do anything. It's just the mindset of it. And I think the other part of getting your podcast to everywhere is, you know, sitting down and being real with yourself and just visualizing like, hey, this is where I want to be. You know, where am I going to be? And like saying, this is what I want, like clear, defined goals. And that's what I've done lately is like, these are the clear, defined goals of where I want to be with the podcast in particular. And when you do that, then, you know, the rest is kind of magical in a way, right?
I think and like for everybody listening, that's a classic example of coaching out advice and never taking it, right? That's the one thing that I talk about all the time and I forget to do sometimes, right? Like I don't take that time to sit down and be like, okay, what does it look like? Like tactically, what does it taste like? What's the texture? What's my day going to be like? Right. That's awesome. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to sit down and spend an hour just like future casting, you know, 1, 3, 5, and 10 years out for the podcast. Cause this one's not stopping. I'm going to have like 20,000 episodes by the time I'm done. So
I know I enjoyed being on your podcast. I thought it was fantastic, and I think you're right. You just got to know what you want.
Totally.
That's the whole thing. And I'm sure you've done that with your other businesses too. You knew exactly where
Oh
you
yeah.
wanted to be.
Yeah. Those ones, it's always funny. It's the ones closest to me that I always ignore the most, right? But like all my physical products brands and my supplement companies, the ones with my partners, I do it with them all the time because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, I got to make sure they're taken care of. And then the ones with me, I'm like, I'm not taking my own advice again. I need to go drink my own Kool-Aid now.
Yep. Can you talk about maybe a couple of your physical products, what
Yeah.
you've done with them, maybe some real success stories and maybe some that didn't work
Yeah.
out too well? Just give everybody an idea of some other things you do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. I got plenty that didn't work out. I'll start with the successes. So, my favorite, I can't, it's like choosing a favorite child, right? Especially when you have business partners and all of them. But the two brands that I love the most that I'm a part of and created, number one is High Speed Daddy. So we make tactical backpacks for men, right? And so if you're a dad, it's a diaper bag, hiking bag, bug out bag. We have lunch bags. But our whole mission is to help men, provide, protect, and connect. And so my business partner and I are both veterans. He was an Army veteran. I was a Marine veteran. And so we've built that entire company organically and bootstrapped with physical products. And in 3.5 years, we have 3 employees. They are all veterans, and we will do probably 11 million this year bootstrapped. And no paid media until a couple months ago, organic out the door. And I mean, we did organic to 100 grand a month. And we're talking about using rotating lines of credit for 6-month inventory lead times and spread loading across. So we never had to take a dollar and never had to cut in. And so from day one, we ran that business, Mike McAllowitz model, profit first, and we never got off of it. And it was the only rule. And so we didn't start paying ourselves till maybe 3 months ago, like 3.5 years in, but I love that one. And we donate 10% of gross to veterans organizations, nonprofits. And then another one is Impact Bars, like impact, but an E. So Impact Bars, EMPACT bars.com. It looks like a women's only brand, but I take the products more than women. But we are geared towards women because all of our nonprofits that we're associated with fund women getting out of shelters and out of abusive relationships, funding their education, giving them housing. And so we support nonprofits like that through our products. And so we have bars, and we always say one's a snack, two's a meal, but like peanut butter date night. And these are all like plant-based, amazing protein bars, snack bars. And then we have the best protein I've ever had in my life. It's a vanilla cinnamon. It's like dessert in a cup, and it uses this amazing plant sweetener called allulose. So it's vegan, it's keto, it's dairy-free, sugar-free, and it's absolutely amazing. And so we focus heavily in that company on empowering women and helping them thrive. And so those are two that I'm like near and dear to my heart. So High Speed Daddy and then Impact Bars. And then I can't say the name of the company, but there was one that we lost recently, and we went from doing $56,000 a day to $800 a week in about 2 months. And circumstantial, the world, right, shut down, and it was like the perfect storm. If you've ever seen that movie with Mark Wahlberg, the world shut down, then the manufacturer shut down, and then the distributor shut down, and then Amazon changed listings. And then by the time everything opened back up, we went from number 1 to number 700th, couldn't fund inventory, couldn't pay the team. And the biggest lesson that I learned there, and this is something I know, is that our entire business was predicated on somebody else, on one platform. It was singular channel focused. It was transactional in nature, which, there's a lot of people that build Amazon businesses, and we have a few of them. But this was the one that was primarily just there. No audience outside of it, didn't build any assets, didn't really have people going to the website. And so when you lose your sole funding and your sole purpose and your sole platform, it gets ugly, and it gets ugly really, really, really fast.
I like how you said that about the giving back in the your two businesses. It seems like the Empower Women giving 10% back to the veterans. It seems like it's near and dear to your heart too. Like, can you talk about how important as an entrepreneur, as I guess really as a person, when you grow something, to make sure that you're giving back as well?
Yeah, I think it's a requirement to succeed.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times people struggle because they have toxic thinking, like I'll give when, I'll do it when. And there's this amazing book. It's a short book. It's like a 3-hour read called The Little Book of Clarity by Jamie Smart. And it talks about that thinking, but that thinking is actually backdoor thinking, and it keeps you where you are. And so, for us, like number one, from a marketing perspective, having a social mission publicly there gives people a reason to support your brand deeper than just a product, right? It gives you something to talk about, marketing messages, document, and have an impact and a part of the process. So obviously from that side of it, you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not only impacting your life, their lives, and you're letting your customers be enrolled into it. But for me, it's a really grounded thing when I get stressed or struggled, or is this going to work? And I was like, I guess kids in Africa don't want to eat today, or I get those veterans don't want to get support today. And it kind of gives me a reason to not fall victim to my excuses, because I always have something bigger that I'm working towards. And so for me personally, the easiest way to get out of a funk is to give away service, to give away support, to give away something. And so with each of these businesses and everything we have tied to giving back, every day that like I'm struggling or my PTSD kicks in, all I have to do is think about one of my companies and then literally be like, okay, well, I don't get to be in my excuses today because I'm blessed to be able to do this, and I have to work hard so I can give these people a better chance or a better life or something there. And so that's why it's important to me. And so I think every company should have a social mission, should have something they support, however they support it. And quite frankly, every single company, like 400 companies that I've ever worked with, all of the successful ones have always had a charity, a giving back, a social mission, or something along those lines to keep everybody enrolled in the company, to keep them a part of it, and to really be able to focus on why we're doing this.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know sometimes when I hit a plateau in business, there's a couple of things I look at. One is, if I feel like I'm stuck or hit a plateau, I don't have a goal that's big enough. So I reach down and try and, figure out really what do I want and why do I want it. But the other part is, I look at it, and say, where can I give right now? Like, because I think, you hit plateaus or you hit certain levels. It's like, maybe I'm just not giving enough. Like, and it's kind of crazy to say that. And it's not looking at it like I'm going to give to get, but it's like, if I feel a certain way, like I feel like, okay, I've reached all my goals. I feel like I'm at a plateau. I just feel like, a way to make me feel better is to give. And I think that's, when you give from that natural place, I think great things happen too. And you're right. You're in a position for a reason, and you got to use it that way too.
Yeah. I think, I think for me, I don't remember who said this. So one of my teachers or mentors a long time ago said is that you have to have a goal bigger than yourself, right? You have to have something, and you call it whatever you want. Call it God, call it higher power, call it spirit, call it a charity, call it something. It's that thing that when it gets to that point, when like I just want to throw in the towel, I just want to quit, it's that thing that doesn't let that door close. It keeps it like a sliver open. And you're like, I can't. I have to do this, or I'm a part of this. And it's okay. Like I think, I think for me, another part of it from the psychological side is, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to be angry. Like, we're humans. We're supposed to modulate emotions. And, for me, what I find is that it also is kind of like this back door that doesn't let me, or it's kind of like this accountability container that doesn't let me stay in it too long, right? Like I can have a bad day. Like I'm just going to disconnect. I'm going to go out in nature, no phone. I'm going to cry. I'm going to process my feelings. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh, I could do this for like 6 days. It's like, no, I feel better. I got to get back to work. I have an impact to make, right? Like it's kind of like it's that breadcrumb, like right when you need it, that you've advocated a little bit of your thinking to it. And I think it's really important. And whether it's a goal in your business, whether it's, a goal for your family, whether it's a goal for yourself, I think the most important part, and I think why having a nonprofit or a charitable organization is so powerful, it's the accountability that comes with it, right? Because when it's in your head and it's just you can quit on yourself all day, right? But like if you have a goal for your family and you're having an off day and your wife knows your goal and your kids know your goal, they can respect your off day. But then the moment you see them the next morning, you're like, all right, I have my off day. It's time to get back to work because they know, and this is what we're doing. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of it. You're absolutely right. Like, and how often do you hear people talk about like New Year's resolutions and stuff like that? Like the truth is you have to really evaluate yourself more often, right?
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's like, if you're making New Year's resolutions, like why did you quit on your goals for 11 months? Like that's the thing that I think about. Like resolutions don't come overnight, and it's the small consistent daily actions that add up to the big ones. And it's like, my favorite thing is like I'll start Monday. I'm like, why? I'm like, why start Monday when you can start right now? Like
Yeah.
that's not living. That's like advocating our success. It's self-sabotage and it's putting out. And I know I fell in that trap for so long. I was like, I'm only going to do something if it's all the way, if it's perfect, if it's going to be the most extreme. And I realized that I could never reach that level without first putting in the small habits to have the momentum or the container or the structure to reach that level. And so now everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to start training, next week. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to walk 10 minutes a day, right? Like I'm going to run a marathon. I'm like, cool. When? They're like, next month, I'm going to run 8 miles a day. I'm like, or if you just ran for 5 minutes a day for the last 6 months, you could probably already be, further on your training. And I think it's really, really important to remember that those small things every day. I think it's great to set goals. I think it's great to set intentions, but I don't think it's great to advocate your growth and advocate your success to next week, next month, New Year's Eve. I think it's like, hey, I'm going to do these things every day. They're going to get me there. And then maybe I'll do something fun or kick it up a notch for some more accountability. But I find that it's really easy to quit on your dreams by just putting it off and putting it off. And so, me, my coaches, the students that I have, it's like, what are we doing every day to become that person? And that's all it is. It's just another step forward to becoming that person. And that's the consistency that adds up. It creates iteration, it creates iterations, it creates momentum. And really, it's a really good skill set to have, because instead of it's like, oh, wait. Oh, I've been doing this diet for 3 weeks. I stopped, I'm done. It's like, no, like we're going to have off days. There's going to be days I miss my workout. There's going to be days I miss my macros. And the truth is like, oh, I missed it. I'll go tomorrow. Right. Or I'll go right now. And like that mindset, like, and that momentum is really what creates success in whatever area that you think of. And I think it's just so important to play the game that way.
How important have the coaches and mentors been to you? I think that's I think a lot of times people underestimate in the very beginning when they're trying to start a business of how much somebody, a mentor or a coach, and then you hear people talk about like, well, that's why athletes have personal coaches. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I was that guy for years that was like, I don't need a coach, I don't need a teacher, I don't need a mentor, I don't need anything. And the truth is that I had them all around me. I just wasn't accepting their help, right? And and I had a broken relationship with the coach member, coach student, coach athlete mentality, because I had it programmed that a coach would only come in if I wasn't doing something right or if I wasn't good enough, right? And it was my buddy Jeff Spencer, who I love to pieces. Jeff's responsible for coaching 100 gold medalists, and he's an Olympian himself. He has this champion's mindset blueprint, or champion's blueprint. And he looked at me one day and he said, listen, Olympic athletes are Olympic athletes whether they have a coach or not. He said, but the difference between coming in last and coming in first is having somebody else help navigate your blind spots and see your strengths and train your weaknesses. And I was like, going, he's like, that's the point of a coach. It's not to give you anything. It's not because you're broken or because you're wrong. It's because you already have what it takes. And a coach is the sculptor that can just make those small tweaks that give you where you're going. And it was a really interesting perspective shift for me. And after that, I became like the help master. I was like, can you help me? 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 And like really genuinely being open to receiving. And then I realized that everybody in my life is my coach, as long as I choose to hear it. And this goes back to the same thought process with the haters and the comments. It's like, there's one of two ways to take that. You take that personally, or you take that as a growth opportunity. And it's really based on where we are in our business or our life. And so for me, I'm like, listen, I'm okay if you don't want to coach, but don't tell me that you want to achieve the result in 3 months. If you're going to do it, you got to be honest. And you're like, I want to coach. Cool. I want to achieve it in 3 months. Cool. I don't want to coach. Cool. Except it's going to take 5 years and it's going to hurt a lot worse. And that's really like the game that it comes down to. And like anything, right? Like I don't change my oil. It would take me 8 hours to change my oil. It takes the mechanic 10 minutes, right? Like I could go do it. I would lose money, but I could go do it. But I understand the value of having somebody else's expertise, or somebody that's done something or knows something better than me, or even sees something better than me. And that's really, really what it is. And so I think coaching is always effective as long as you are coachable and open. And you have to realize that you're the superstar. If you're hiring a coach, you've already won. You're the superstar. You have what it takes. They're helping refine your process, your diet, your training, your mindset, your marketing, your messaging, but you're the hero. And I think once you start to get to that distinction, you're kind of unstoppable. And you can't find me one successful person, and I'm not talking even monetarily. I'm talking abundant health, happiness, that lives alone, that lives in solitude without a group of people around them to hold them up, that see them to their biggest selves and don't allow them to stay in the bottom too long.
George, I think it's been fantastic, everything you brought to us. I think you nailed that as well. Where can people find more of you? If they want to get more of you, they want to get into the mind of George, where can they do that?
Yeah, so here's your disclaimer. Once you get in, you can't get out, right? So if this is what it sounds like, imagine what it's like inside my head. The best place is mindofgeorge.com. I make it easy. My podcast is my favorite thing on the planet right now. It's the Mind of George show, but everything's at mindofgeorge.com. It'll link to our Facebook group. It'll link to our podcast. It's everywhere podcasts are. It even has my daily newsletter on there inside of our Facebook group. So if there's anything I can do to support anybody, please shoot me a DM on Instagram or Facebook. I'll link from the website. I want to thank everybody for sharing their time with me. It's the one thing I can't give back to you. So mindofgeorge.com is the best place, my friend.
Now it's time to solve the equation to George Bryant's success. 7 rapid fire questions. Are you ready, George? Okay,
I
great.
love rapid fire questions.
All right. Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
Best seminar teaching I've ever been to was a silent shamanic retreat in Costa Rica for 7 days.
Favorite item you've ever bought recently under $100?
The book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you met in person.
My wife.
Favorite book to give as a gift?
The Catalyst by Jonah Berger.
Something you do every morning before you brush your teeth.
Workout.
Your personal mantra or favorite quote?
To stand with structure in the face of resistance to create possibility.
And it's trademarked. We learned that.
And relationships always beat algorithms.
Great. Place you go to decompress and reset.
My ice bath.
Oh, awesome. That kind of intrigued me a little bit, George. So tell us about your ice bath.
Yeah, cold therapy is the secret to my health. Cold therapy is what got me off pain meds, got me out of pain, all the trauma I've experienced. And so I was blessed to have met Wim Hof and found his breath work and cold therapy. Amazing book by Scott Carney called What Doesn't Kill Us Make Us Stronger. Talks about cold therapy. And so for me, ice baths were kind of like my gateway into meditation, presence, self-discovery and self-work. And I was such a baby the first 3 weeks I tried this. I didn't tell anybody, but I put an ice bath in my backyard. I've been doing breath work and I was like, okay, I get this. I get how powerful cold exposure is and I'm going to do this. And I think for the first 3 weeks, I jumped in and was out in 15 seconds. I just kept quitting on myself. And I was like, okay, it's a part of the process. And I'll never forget. It was day 20 and there was this surrender. And it's okay, I'm doing this for me. Do you really want to do it or not? And I was like, just get in. And I ended up getting in and sitting in there for 16 minutes. And it was the most eye-opening, alive, presencing moment of my life. And I fell in love with cold therapy that day. And there's something to be said about training your body to be present and grounded in discomfort, right? And Scott Carney then went on to write a second book called The Wedge. And he actually talks about the scientific response, the psychological response to you being able to have triggers, stress, bankruptcy, ad accounts, trauma, and have zero reaction because you're so grounded and present that you're basically trained your body to be there and in that moment. And so cold therapy is one of the most powerful tools that I've ever had in my arsenal. I literally built an ice bath in my garage. It's right next to my sauna. So I go in the sauna for an hour and then I jump in the ice bath and I remind myself who I am in that moment.
George, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for being on the show. We really appreciate everything. Wonderful guest. We really loved having you. Thanks, George.
Thanks, man.